Okay, let me just give you guys a little bit of opening comments before I turn it over to Brian Sheridan. I am Joe Liu. I'm the president and CEO of Coalition for Clean Air. Thank you and for joining us today. It's really great to have you here. Here's what to expect for the next 57 minutes is Brian will do a little bit of an introduction, our development director, and then I'll go over some of the housekeeping stuff, and we'll get a presentation from Foothill Transit, our speakers, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A with them and give you a chance to also post questions in the chat. We'll select some of them. We have someone who's going to actually help select those questions, and we'll try to get your questions in as much as we can have time for. And this is all going to go by really quickly, but we're going to talk about innovations in transit today. And I'll turn it over to Brian Sheridan to make a couple of comments.
Thanks, Joe. And hey, so everybody, if I can just encourage you, having been a main presenter at many of these things, especially on Zoom, sometimes it gets a little bit like you're looking at just a big blank screen. So if I can encourage you to, turn on your cameras, I think it's always appreciated just to look at people. And then of course, please do use the chat to introduce yourselves, let people know where you're coming from. But as Joe said, and last thing, given that there are, over 100 people registered for this, I think speaker view probably works best. I'm the development director at the Coalition for Clean Air, and I have the unique pleasure of running California Clean Air Day. So one thing I want to make sure that everyone has on their calendar is October 4th, 2023. It's all California Clean Air Day always happens the first Wednesday of October. Today we're talking about transit. And so I just wanted to share something that we just shared on Twitter this morning, which is the results of a survey. So in addition to sponsoring this webinar, thank you, Foothill. They have been a really important part of California Clean Air Day since its inception. And there's a reason for that. We know that to meet our climate goals, we really need to get people out of their cars in addition to changing the cars themselves. And so we need to be innovative in trying to get people to take buses and trains and things. So we surveyed folks and said, hey, what did you do? What did you commit to for Clean Air Day? And a good portion of them, over half for their Clean Air Pledge, pledge to take public transit, which is great because we know that 98% of people that take the Clean Air Pledge actually do the things, at least one of the things that they said they do. And more importantly, folks said 3/4 of them said, yes, they would consider taking public transit again based on that experience. So I just sort of point that out because, our transit agencies play such an important role in that campaign, which comes along again, October 4th, 2023. After Earth Day, we will open it up for registration from organizations, and I hope that many of you take advantage of that. Last year, we had 555 corporate, small business, government, unions participating in the event. So one of the things I'll also encourage you to do is turn off your speakers for now. But the other thing I wanted to just flag for everybody, if you don't have it on your calendar, we haven't opened up tickets yet, but it's a great event. Our 27th annual California Clean Air Awards, I just mixed up two things. Our California Air Quality Awards, which will be at the Japanese American Museum. It is an amazing venue, actually. If you haven't been there, I definitely encourage everybody to visit, even if they're not coming to our event. But we've got some great honorees, including California Air Resources Board Chair Leanne Randolph, Veronica Padilla Campos, who for more than a decade has been the executive director of Pacoima Beautiful, and the Sustainable Production Alliance. So if you're wondering what's going on among our studios and their efforts to bring down their emissions, come to our event. They are very deserving June 30th at the Japanese American National Museum. Clean Air Day information can be found at cleanairday.org, and the information for the upcoming awards can be found at ccair.org in the event section. I'll put both of them in the chat. But again, please tell us who you are, put your, information in the chat. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Joe.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And we return back to the housekeeping items. If you don't know how to do the speaker view, it's in the top right-hand corner if you're on a desktop like I am. For those of you people who are Zoom challenged, it just works a little bit better when we do this format. And please keep your mic on mute unless you're speaking. We do this format because as opposed to the webinar format, because it allows you to post to the chat and private message each other and make your introductions and all of that. So that's why we choose this format. If you don't mute yourself, we can mute you and we will do it, but we don't want to. So keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. Also, I think everyone got that notice that this event is being recorded. So like with everything we do nowadays, just expect it to show up on, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and everything like that. Don't do or say anything you wouldn't want everyone in the world to see or hear. And we'll probably, we're going to, I think, end up posting this to our website like we do with all of our Clean Air Conversation events. So that's life nowadays in the modern world. I think that's it for housekeeping. So I get to move on to introducing our two special guests and friends and partners. From Foothill Transit, we have with us Roland Cordero, who is the Director of Maintenance and Vehicle Technology at Foothill Transit, and longtime friend and colleague Doran Barnes, the CEO of Foothill Transit, who's been working on these issues of clean bus transportation for quite some time. So they're going to do this presentation that they have to kind of orient everyone as to what's going on. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Well, great, Joe. Thank you. And Brian, it's good to be with everyone. And we're always glad to share the Foothill Transit story and hope that it is both informative in terms of what we've experienced, but also generating some ideas for others that are also following this pathway. So again, Doran Barnes, Chief Executive Officer at Foothill Transit. And I'm joined by Roland Cordero. And Roland's the guy you ask all the technical questions of, the big picture guy. So Roland, let's move on to the next slide. We always start these conversations with our mission statement. And if you look at this mission statement, the very last word there, innovation, all the words are equally important to us, but innovation is the one that I think has driven our journey along this zero emission pathway the very most. And I think having that innovation component as part of the DNA of our organization has been very important. Foothill Transit was actually created as an innovative transit provider here in Los Angeles County. And we were designed from the very beginning to be a bit different in terms of how we deliver service. We partner with the private sector extensively for the delivery of our program. So that set us up very well to move into this zero emission journey. Going on to the next slide, just to give you a little bit of background about our organization, we are the primary fixed route transit operator for the Pomona and San Gabriel valleys in eastern Los Angeles County. So geographically, if you think about the area from Pomona and Claremont, stretching over to Pasadena, El Monte, the mountains to the north, the Interstate 60 corridor to the south, that's generally our service area. About 1.5 million residents, 327 square miles. And we do run connecting service into downtown Los Angeles and other neighboring communities. So we are really part of that mosaic of transit services that serves the entire region, with our focus being the San Gabriel and Pomona valleys. We operate 30 local lines, 6 express lines, and we do that with a fleet of 337 compressed natural gas buses. Those buses are running on renewable natural gas. So again, our early commitment to the environment, to sustainability. And we currently have 33 electric buses, although those are shifting. And we'll talk a little bit about the point we are in the journey. And again, with innovation being at the core of our mission and the core of our focus. Going on to the next slide, Roland. I don't think we need to really talk too much about this. We know that Los Angeles has been challenged with air quality issues. I remember when I moved to Los Angeles County in 1997, the first summer I was here, I didn't even know there were mountains to the north. And fortunately, things have changed because of the hard work that we've all put in a variety of different spaces. We want to be part of that solution and really do our part in terms of helping improve the air quality in the region, which is so important to all of us. Next slide. So here's the day, and often we talk about this date in September 3rd, 2010. That's the day that we launched our heavy-duty fast charge electric bus program. And in thinking about it, I often think, it's been a decade that we've been at this. It's really been longer than a decade because we started the launch of this program sometime around 2008, so really 15 years ago. At the time, we had a senior member of our leadership team who had extensive background in vehicle technology. He really felt that grid-powered battery electric buses were ready to launch into the next phase and to become a key way that we could deliver service in a zero-emission method. So we were the first in North America to launch heavy-duty fast charge vehicles, and we did that on our line 291 in Pomona. It's a hard-working line, carried 5% of our ridership, so it was the real deal. It was real transit. This wasn't an experiment. We were really digging in. Next slide, Roland. So as the program developed, again, the first buses came in 2010, 3 of those fast charge buses, and then we added 12 more fast charge vehicles, and then 2 more behind that. And that was our first group of vehicles, first group of technology. And generally speaking, the technology worked well. The buses only had about a less than 40-mile range, but you could charge those buses in less than 10 minutes. So we could be running those buses constantly, really 24 hours a day, using grid-powered battery electric technology. The challenge is the very broad range in what the cost of electricity is. If we think about an August day, what you pay for electricity at 6 in the morning and what you pay for it at 6 in the afternoon are 2 very different things. And that was one of the big learnings that we got out of this first group. Moving on, Roland. We have 2 double-deck buses that we've also launched in service. Again, the first 2 battery electric double-deck buses that are in operation in North America. Again, the challenge with these vehicles has been range, and that's something you'll hear about on the grid-powered side. Range is improving, but range and charging times are really 2 of the big challenges that you'll hear us talk about through this thread. Part of the rationale behind the double-deck bus was to change the thinking about transit, to have something that had some real curb appeal and to create a great experience for our customers. What you saw there, go ahead, Roland. Threw you off. What you see here are the in-route chargers that we have on those fast charge vehicles. We have 2 chargers at our Pomona Transit Center. The buses would come in, the overhead charger would come down, connect with the bus, and you're able to charge that bus in about 7 minutes, generally speaking. We do that about every 2 hours, again, be able to keep that bus in continuous operation. I mentioned the challenge of electric costs being very different throughout the day. The other challenge that we faced with this technology is that while it may not sound like a lot, adding 5 to 7 minutes of charging time really has a cost implication. And again, that's another learning that came out of this early group of electric vehicles. That coach operator is still being paid even though that bus isn't moving. And so we have to factor that in as a cost element in terms of how we use this technology. Again, something we hadn't experienced with other technologies in the past. Going on, Roland. So again, you see our in-route charger at our Azusa Intermodal Transit Center, a little bit different technology, same technology in terms of the charging, but different group of buses. So our next step in this journey was to purchase 14 extended range buses. These buses charge overnight. They go more than 40 miles, which is the first group of buses. But what we learned with these is that the extended range buses can do about 150 to 160 miles on a single charge. That covers some of our routes, but we have many bus assignments where the bus travels over 200 miles a day, 200, 225 miles a day. So if you've only got 150 miles worth of energy on board the vehicle, that becomes a giant operational challenge. We have been able to extend that slightly by doing this opportunity charging at our Azusa Transit Center. But again, what we found with the extended range buses is that 4 to 5 hour charging period overnight, combined with the range limitation, still doesn't get us to parity in terms of being able to do the job. Now, much like your cell phones, these technologies are evolving on a daily basis, so things are continuing to move forward, and we continue to look at grid-powered battery electric buses as being part of the solution, but it's not the only part. Roland, next slide. So here's a picture of the in-depot chargers. These are the overnight chargers that we use. There are literally plugs that come down from overhead. They plug into the bus. Bus charges about 5 hours to be able to get a full load of fuel or energy on board for the day. So next slide, Roland. So again, with our battery electric experience, 13 years of experience now, the issues of range, the issues of charging requirements, and the high cost of chargers have really been things that have been great learnings that we've had coming out of this. But they certainly create some new challenges that we have to face as transit operators that are very different than what we've had to deal with historically. So in light of that, we've been looking at and starting to move down the path of additional technology. Next slide, Roland. The other thing we would note here before I keep wanting to get to the hydrogen thing, and I know Roland's excited about hydrogen, but we did do a major analysis of what it would take to go completely grid powered, and that is available on our website. In fact, Felicia, I don't know if you can put up the link in the chat to that. If anyone would like to take a look at it, you'll see that it talks a lot about going with grid power, but the back end of it talks a lot about hydrogen and hydrogen technology, which is the next phase, the third chapter, if you will. And we've actually pivoted towards experimenting now with hydrogen fuel cells as opposed to grid-powered battery electric. As you may be familiar, a hydrogen fuel cell bus takes hydrogen, passes it through the fuel cell stack, combines with oxygen. The byproducts are the electron that powers the bus and water. It's a zero-emission technology, but a different kind of zero-emission technology. And we have now taken delivery of 33 hydrogen fuel cell buses that create and are beginning this, again, third chapter of where we are in our journey. Next slide. And Roland, am I supposed to hand this to you at this point?
No, I can go ahead. I mean,
I'm getting into your stuff here. So, Roland and I are both so excited about this. So Roland is like the godfather of hydrogen for us. And I wasn't paying attention to the count, but so why have you made the pivot here?
So, through our experience of operating battery electric buses for the last 13 years, we found several limitations from battery electric. The extended range buses that we purchased back in 2017, although we were told that it has a nominal range of 251 miles, in actual service, it could only reach 150 miles. That's why we had to install overhead chargers at our Azusa Intermodal Transit Center in order to be able to extend the range of the bus. As Doran mentioned earlier, some of our blocks on that line that we electrified, line 280, some of the blocks are over 200 miles, 220, 225 miles. So that's why we had to do a range extender. So the vehicle range with hydrogen fuel cell is now at 300 miles. And there's also a new bus from El Dorado where they claim that the range of the bus is 400 miles. So it's a little bit more efficient to operate actually a hydrogen fuel cell bus in transit. System resiliency, you talk about limited range. Let's say you're in a traffic condition and your battery electric bus is sitting on the 10 freeway and you're blocked for 2 hours and you've got minimal charge on that bus. So you won't be able to continue operations as opposed to a hydrogen fuel cell bus. Infrastructure cost, it's a lot more expensive in terms of when you're scaling up with charging infrastructure for in-depot charging infrastructure for your battery electric bus versus increasing the capacity of fueling more buses with hydrogen infrastructure. Vehicle fueling process, the number one issue that we have with battery electric buses is it takes you hours to fully charge a battery electric bus. Depending on the state of charge when the bus returns to the yard, It can take 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. But with hydrogen fuel cell bus, it only takes you about 7 to 10 minutes to fully fuel the bus. So if you're in a situation where you need to deploy buses out immediately, you'll be kind of stuck with your battery electric buses having to wait for hours before you can deploy them. Next slide. So there are two roads to zero emissions. You have battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell bus. This is showing you the picture of our hydrogen fueling infrastructure that we're building, well, almost built at the Pomona operations and maintenance facility. In fact, construction-wise is already completed. We're just waiting for commissioning that's going to start next week. Dora?
Roland, take it to the end. Go, keep going.
So I'm just showing you pictures of some of our hydrogen fuel cell fleet. We've wrapped some of our buses as our marketing program to educate people, to show them that there's another technology to help clean the emissions in their neighborhood. Yours, Doran, ongoing challenges?
I think the ongoing challenges, we're still early in terms of deploying these technologies, and we've got a lot of work to do to move to scale. We have had some challenges with fleet reliability, particularly in the earliest generation vehicles. I think as we talk about these zero emission technologies, whether it's grid power or whether it's hydrogen, we need to be thinking about resiliency and what happens in the case of, for example, some sort of a natural disaster that might occur. And how do we keep the fleet running so that it can carry out its role if it needs to be deployed for those types of purposes? Workforce development is also an area that we're leaning in hard, making sure that the technicians that traditionally have worked on CNG buses, or for that matter, diesel buses, now have the skills and ability to work on these new technologies. And of course, funding and costs are probably one of the biggest challenges. We're nowhere close to being one-to-one in terms of the cost to deploy these technologies compared to what we've done traditionally. Roll the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
So again, just to focus in on the funding piece just a bit more. Right now, we're looking at about a $430,000 cost differential between a fuel cell bus and a CNG bus. And that's a significant amount of taxpayer dollars being invested in these technologies. We spend a lot of time trying to chase after grant funding to be able to cover that cost differential, but there's clearly a cost differential, and we have to be aware of that. From a fuel standpoint, hydrogen is our current cost for hydrogen is 2.5 times what it is for CNG. We're hopeful that projects like the hydrogen hub efforts coming out of the U.S. Department of Energy will help drive that down. But right now, that check still has to be written at significantly higher cost. On the electric side, electric charging infrastructure is costly, has impacts to operations. And again, the cost of electricity, as we know, can vary widely on any one given day. So that's also an issue. And then the last point I always like to end with is that zero emissions is super important. Air quality is super important. We have to look at that, though, from the content also of service and service delivery. And it can't be zero emission at the cost of cuts in service, because really carrying folks and getting people where they need to go without having to operate individual vehicles is also part of the clean air solution. So looking at things from a holistic standpoint is important. Next slide, which is our last slide, I believe, and we can get into some questions and discussion. I hope you can see Roland and I are both really, really enthusiastic about this. It's been a really exciting space to work in. We've learned a lot, and one of the most rewarding things I think is being able to participate in forums like this, where we can share these experiences and have this dialogue, so that we are all working together, learning from each other on this journey towards both mobility and clean air.
Well, thank you both to you, Doran, and to Roland. You guys were so thorough. You pretty much answered every question I had for you.
Oh.
But I will do my best. And
no, you've got great questions. I kind of got a sneak peek. So
the first one I want to talk about is look, your people too. I mean, you're not just a transit agency, so let's get a chance, not taking up the entire 20 minutes we have for this, but let's take a minute and talk about yourself, how you ended up getting involved in transit, and whether you grew up being a transit person, or how that evolved. A little bit from you, maybe a little bit from Roland, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think when you talk to folks in this transit space, the thing you often hear is, I never expected to be working in the transit environment, and yet here I am. And I think the common thing that we share is that transit professionals, whatever job they have, ultimately our focus is making our communities better and providing mobility. And I think that's the thing that keeps us in this space. There's a greater good that we're trying to achieve. For me personally, I did my undergraduate work at the University of California at Davis. I was going to be an international business tycoon, and that was my goal. I needed a job, and one of the better paying jobs on campus was driving a bus for Unitrans.
Oh, no kidding.
Unitrans.
I've known you forever. I never knew that story.
Yeah. So I went to work for Unitrans, which is owned by the Associated Students there and integrated well with the schedule. And I was a coach operator. I moved through several student management positions, and as they say, the rest is history.
Well, yeah, the international tycoon thing could be a side hustle at this point.
I think, yeah, there we go. Well, it's had some interesting ties in as well. So, but that's kind of where my journey began. I've been.
How about you, Roland?
Ever since.
Yes, hi. I used to take public transit years ago, starting off, going to school. Used to take the RTD, the yellow bus, throw in a quarter in the big box. And over the years, I went to college, Cal State LA, had a background in finance and business administration. And throughout the years, you'd spend a few years here or there at your job. And finally, I landed at transit. I didn't know much about public transit. All I knew was taking the bus. However, as I got more involved with everything that happens in transit, I found myself interested in providing this service to the community. And I've got a lot of interest in terms of mechanical work. Love cars. I understand how they work. And I figured, a car and a bus, basically the same thing, just on a larger scale. And when the position came up in terms of fleet maintenance and with electrification, I was just attracted to this technology, and I wanted to get involved. And I want to be able to assist the agency in building a legacy for Foothill Transit in terms of creating zero emissions and cleaning the air and helping our community. So I enjoy what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing, and it's great to be part of this whole organization.
Thanks, Roland. That's great. You'd actually fit in very well at Coalition for Clean Air. We didn't even talk about our mission. Our mission is pretty clear. It's protect public health, improve air quality, and prevent climate change. And that's what you're doing at Foothill, and that's why we're all aligned on this stuff. So I'm going to skip a few of these questions because you already answered them in your presentations. But transit agencies throughout California they have to commit to zero emission buses, the ones that haven't already, because the California Air Resources Board has adopted new regulations. So what advice would you have for other transit agencies based on your experience? What do they need to look out for, and what do they need to know going in?
Roland, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, sure. So when we started this project, we were just trying the first battery electric bus, trying to figure out how it works in our service application. What I would recommend to other transit agencies that want to delve into this technology is to, first off, do a route analysis. See how your service interfaces with the two different technologies, battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell. You need to see how it fits in your service and how you can deliver the service without having too many impacts on how you operate your business. Second of all, I think you need to get your stakeholders involved, educate your board members, policy holders, so that there'll be a good decision making in terms of what technology to move forward with. Looking at the funding requirements, getting the entire organization involved in this search for the right fleet. You have your planning department, operations department, everybody in the organization has to be totally involved in the decision making. Partnering with your utilities as well. That's a very important fact, because without them understanding what you're delving into, they won't be able to help you, assist you in terms of developing a specific rate or whatnot. We partnered with Southern California Edison from day one when we got involved with battery electric buses. And we've worked with each other, and we were able to help them develop, to a certain degree, develop programs to assist transit agencies in transitioning to a zero emissions fleet.
Great.
Joe,
Anything to add to that, Doran?
Yeah, I would agree with everything Roland said there. And my job is to support, one of my main jobs is to support and work with our 25-member board of directors. And as policymakers, they ultimately have to make these decisions about technology investment, about pathway. We guide them, we advise them, but ultimately they make those decisions. And I think as we're working with those policymakers, we really have to double down on this notion that, we're still fairly early in these technology developments. Even though we're 15 years in, we're still learning a lot. It's not that these technologies have been completely perfected, that we know exactly what to do. We're still learning, and innovation involves some risk, and it means that sometimes things won't go exactly as planned. I tell my board constantly, we're going to learn things we don't even know we're going to learn. We're going to fail sometimes, but we're going to learn from that. We're going to pick ourselves up and we're going to keep going, but we're going to stumble. And I think that's really important. And often in the public sector, we're not as good at that innovation process as the private sector. I think we've got to really continue to reinforce our thinking around that.
Yeah, that is a really good point. You actually have to plan to fail a bit.
Yeah, you
or
do.
to learn. Yeah.
You have to fail smart.
I remember that. I mean, I was putting a new television in my house when we moved to our house many years ago, and the fact that I had to go back to the hardware store like 3 times just to, have the right stuff to actually put the television up. I thought, here I am regulating refineries, telling them they can, turn over their equipment, add on, emission control technology and everything like that. And it's not going to cost them anything, and it's going to be easy and, one and done.
Right.
I had a whole new appreciation for that. Yeah, it doesn't go right the first time, right? I mean, it just doesn't, and you learn a lot along the way. So I think that's good advice for folks. We've got some really great questions in the audience. We're going to get to that from them in a second, but I do want to talk about COVID and how that affected transit agencies in general, how that affected you. I mean, it was a real wake-up call. All of a sudden, you had no ridership. You had to protect the health of your bus drivers and your other staff and workers. And to the extent that you rely on fare box collection, it disappeared overnight. What did you learn from the COVID experience, and how do you think that changes the way we think about transit ridership?
Yeah, COVID certainly was it was a thing. I think we've learned a lot about our communities, about our mission. I don't think we ever could have designed an experiment absent the horrific experience of COVID, where we would say, who are essential riders that have to ride to get to medical care, to buy food, to work in the hospitals, for that matter, to put groceries on the shelves. And all of those things really manifested themselves during the COVID period. I remember there were a couple of things that happened during that time frame. I never thought in my career that we would have a marketing campaign that said, "Don't ride the bus." Well, what it really said was, if this is an essential trip, we're here for you. If it's not an essential trip, literally, we said, go home, because that was the call. What we found was that about half of our ridership were people that were taking those essential trips. We always knew that we served those essential trips, but that really put a spotlight on how important the work is that we do in the community to carry out and get people transported for those essential trips. I think as we're now moving forward, we continue to have that sharper focus on making sure we're there to serve those essential trips. We've also seen that a chunk of our ridership are folks that are doing information-based jobs that can work remotely. And so there's a subset of our riders who used to ride into downtown Los Angeles to do a job that was probably at a desk in front of a computer. Those riders are now riding 2 days a week, not 5 days a week. And, we've learned that remote work can be done. It can be done successfully. I think we're serving a similar number of residents, but those residents aren't taking the same number of trips. Now, that's not necessarily all bad. People often ask, well, what's your ridership now compared to the pre-COVID days? And it's sort of like hearkening back to the good old days of the 1950s. Things were different back then. And it's really not about where are we related to pre-COVID? It's where are we related to providing those essential trips and evolving the mission in light of this new landscape that we're working in. And that's a story that's being written as we speak.
And that, I mean, I know that you're not as dependent on fare boxes as some other transit agencies, but it does make an impact, right? I mean, you have to, it's a whole different economic situation for you.
It is. Transit is heavily subsidized, much like other things in our communities. I mean, parks, libraries, a variety of things that we as a society fund and support because it has a societal good. Transit really fits into that space. You're right. Fare box is an element of funding. For us, our customers in the good old days paid about 15% of the operating cost. Now it's running about 7%.
Mm-hmm.
Money in the old checkbook. Fortunately, we were at 15% and not 50%, so we're better able to manage and deal with that. But again, the economics of transit are also evolving, and when you look at it from both the standpoint of what we're doing from an emissions standpoint, but also from a mobility standpoint, again, I think the next couple of years are going to be really interesting and really challenging as we move into whatever the future is going to look like.
Okay, let's turn to some of the questions from the people who have joined us here today, and I've got a few of them here. One was, how does a transit agency source hydrogen to ensure that it's green or low carbon? Because green is a little hard to define sometimes, but you're really trying to get, and because you have a mission to help with air quality and climate change, to get the cleanest hydrogen possible. How do you go about doing that?
You want to start rolling? Or you want me to start on that one?
You can go ahead if you want. Yeah, I'll follow up with you. No, I got something in my head already, but yeah.
Well, boy, that's a complicated question, and I think our mandate from the California Air Resources Board is zero emission at the tailpipe.
Mm-hmm.
So a part of me says, as long as we put hydrogen in the bus, we're doing what we've been mandated to do. Now, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
We're very much committed to using as much green power as we can. And whether you're looking at hydrogen or you're looking at the grid, neither one of them are 100% green today.
Mm-hmm.
The way I look at it is that if we're going to get to that future of being truly green, we've got to continue to advance these technologies. We've got to learn how to use hydrogen. We've got to learn how to use grid power. We've got to lean on the hydrogen providers and the grid power providers to get greener and greener. And ultimately, we've got to have all these pieces moving forward to get to that goal that we're trying to achieve. If we sit back and say, well, we're not going to do hydrogen until it's all green, well, we're going to lose a lot of learning along the way that is really, really important. Our hydrogen is not completely green. What's our mix, Roland? It's about 30% green.
30%, yeah, 30% green.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so
Well, your electrons weren't 100% green either.
No,
right?
they were 40-50% green. So again, you're right on it, Joe. It's none of it is completely cradle to grave green today. But if we don't keep leaning in on this stuff, we're never going to get there. And I think that's the way I view it in terms of this journey that we're on.
Yeah, and I keep hearing that the ability to get to green electrolytic or other sustainably produced hydrogen is very dependent upon volume.
Right.
So I mean, there are questions of how do you generate that volume to bring down the price. And I hope they're right that once you start really producing it in volume, the price does come down. Because I know the cost of hydrogen is a bit of impediment from making it all work.
Well, and we're taking a bit of a bet that's what's going to happen. At 33 buses, we have the largest hydrogen fuel cell transit fleet in North America today. We just ordered 19 more hydrogen fuel cell buses, and we're hearing all of those projections about volume going up, price coming down, and the hydrogen or the grid power for that matter getting greener. We'll come back in a year or two and see how we're doing.
Well, there's also a big push by hydrogen manufacturers to go green. Plug Power is building a facility up in Northern California, around the Central Coast, I think. where they're going to use renewable energy to power their plant. Solar, they've got a huge solar plant out there to power the facility. So that's going to be totally green. But, you know, I think right now there's more of a push for hydrogen to be green rather than electricity. Again, for electricity to be green, it needs to be powered by wind or hydropower. So eventually, I think we'll get to that point. But again, to Doran's point, you know, the CARB regulation is green from the tailpipe, and that's what we're working with. And you know, it has a big impact on the environment as well. As you can see, we've cleaned up the air in LA County for the last few years, and we're going to continue to move forward with that.
Yeah, as with so much of what we do on climate and air quality, it's a lot of perfect versus good conversations that we have. I know that Air Products is also planning on building a huge electrolytic hydrogen generation facility in Arizona that they're going to use here in California to provide green hydrogen. So others are moving in that direction too. But it is a question of what standard do we hold up which technology to, and when, and how do we get to where we all want to go, which is moving everything on, you know, wind, sunshine, and maybe a little bit of geothermal power or something. There was another question here. Have you considered retrofitting CNG buses to hydrogen? Does that work? And can you save on cost of those, you know, expensive hydrogen buses by doing retrofits?
So I saw that question in the chat, and I was reading it, and like, okay, they're going to ask this question. I got an answer for it. No. So here's the thing. CNG buses are internal combustion buses, so it's totally different from a hydrogen fuel cell bus. Although the concept is almost the same, you power with a certain amount of gas. You can't retrofit a CNG bus to a hydrogen fuel cell bus. You can if you want to spend a lot of money in terms of restructuring the framing of the bus itself. You know, with hydrogen, you don't have an internal combustion engine. It's the fuel cell. You have the battery pack on the rooftop, and you have your hydrogen fuel tanks on the rooftop as well. So there's a lot of different configurations. Some hydrogen fuels, or most hydrogen fuel cell buses are direct drive. With the compressed natural gas, you have a drive shaft that powers the bus, that turns the wheels in the rear of the bus. So it's totally different. Doing infrastructure or refurbishing a CNG bus into a hydrogen fuel cell bus, yeah, it's possible. I mean, CCW did some refurbishing of a 60-foot articulated from compressed natural gas to battery electric. They were able to do it. And if you have the technology and the knowledge and the engineering, yeah, you can do it, but it's going to cost you a ton of money.
So that's Complete Coach Works in Riverside. Just CCW is Complete Coach Works in Riverside.
Yeah,
They refurbish buses and things, and really do an amazing job with it. But it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. So you're better off buying one that's already designed.
Well, right. When you're ready to turn over your fleet, what you're saying is it makes more sense for you to just purchase a hydrogen bus.
And you have to look at the structure of the bus itself. I mean, what's the condition of the fleet or the bus that you're transforming into a hydrogen fuel cell bus?
Well, I've seen the Complete Coach Works refurbished buses. They look brand new. It's just, I mean, the amazing job that they do. And they reuse the frames because the frames they last forever, right? Anyway, there was another question about plug-in hybrid electric buses or vehicles. You know, can you get past the range limitations by using some, you know, form of that, and maybe even a plug-in or a combined fuel cell battery electric bus? Are there other configurations that make sense?
Well, hydrogen fuel cell is actually a battery electric bus. You have a battery in the bus, but instead of plugging it into your outlet to charge the bus for 5 hours, you have the hydrogen fuel cell system that creates electricity to charge the battery. And there are different configurations of hydrogen fuel cell buses. Some are battery dominant, some are hydrogen dominant. So with battery dominant, the bus depends more on the battery energy to operate the bus. With hydrogen dependent hydrogen fuel cell bus, they use more of the hydrogen fuel to propel to help move the bus. So it's basically the same thing. The only difference is you power through the grid or you power the bus with hydrogen technology.
I think one of
Okay.
the key factors in looking at that and the concept of a hybrid vehicle for a transit bus is that with hydrogen, you have the hydrogen tank, you have the hydrogen fueling dispenser, but you don't have other power infrastructure required. If you go with a hybrid vehicle, you have to have all of that hydrogen fueling capability, but you also have to have the ability to plug that vehicle in. And that electrical infrastructure at the facility has a substantial cost to it.
Mhm.
So I think that's why you see a lot less of the hybrid concept, because you have to do the trade-off of putting in the infrastructure to get that plug-in capability. That, when you look at it from a cost effectiveness standpoint, it just doesn't quite pencil out.
Yeah, and Steve Adams, I guess he probably asked the original question, and he clarifying that he's referring to the technology that Honda's coming out with later this year, which is a plug-in hydrogen electric vehicle. I don't think Honda's building transit buses, but yeah, okay, it's so that makes sense. And I guess with you guys, you have some of that charging infrastructure, and it could be, play out in the future, but who knows? There's a couple of other questions. We need to wrap up real soon, just a couple of minutes, and turn it over to Chris Chavez to talk about our Coalition for Clean Air policy work. But there was a question about the projection of prices going down for hydrogen. Do you have a crystal ball on that and predictions? What are you telling your board as to what your budget is for hydrogen over the next few years?
I'm not telling them anything. Roland keeps promising me it's going to go down. It's going to go down.
I think it's been going in the wrong direction lately, right?
Oh man, yeah. I think that's the real wild card in this whole thing. We're looking at really closely at what's happening in the private sector, but also, there are 2 hydrogen hub projects that are looking to secure some of that Department of Energy funding. I think there's a lot of effort going into bringing hydrogen prices down, but boy, that's the wild card.
Yeah, I think that hydrogen hub proposal is due today, or
I think so. Yeah.
yeah. So you're about to press send on that.
Yep,
and
pretty much.
Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about which projects made it and which didn't.
Yep.
Are you guys? Did you have a proposal into Arches for the hydrogen hub in California?
There are 2 California projects that are moving forward. One, and don't ask me the acronym, but Arches is the statewide effort that's being led by I believe the governor's office of business.
Mm-hmm.
We're
over there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're noted in that as a potential consumer for the Arches project. We're also noted as a potential consumer for the San Bernardino Airport project.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, they're also have a proposal, and they made it to the next round. The advantage with San Bernardino Airport is that they're 45 miles up the road from us. We're cheering both of them on with the hope that at least one of them, hopefully both are successful. But again, that goal is to get hydrogen down. Their goal is $1. We were around 4 or 5. I think we'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, that'd be very competitive. I mean,
Yeah.
right? For what you pay for fuel. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the Q&A stuff and thank Roland and Doran for joining us today and actually for the sponsorship of Foothill Transit to make this event possible. But now I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Policy Director of Coalition for Clean Air, Chris Chavez, to provide everyone a little bit of an update on some of our policy advocacy priorities at Coalition for Clean Air this year. So Chris, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Wonderful.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. So my name is Chris Chavez, Deputy Policy Director at Coalition for Clean Air, and I'm based in the LA area, but do a lot of our state advocacy as well. So Coalition for Clean Air, a lot of our bread and butter is in the advocacy space, and our mission is to protect public health, improve air quality, and prevent climate change, though we know climate change is happening. Really a lot of our efforts focus on how to put an equity lens on the state's clean transportation strategy. So really a big part of our focus right now is on the state budget. California is well known to being a climate leader in trying to support new and developing technologies to get those deployed out there and send out market signals in support of that technology. In the last couple of years, we've had historic amounts of funding going to different incentive programs and investments into clean transportation. Unfortunately, the state's budget situation has darkened somewhat, and the clean transportation sector is one of those that's actually looking at cuts in this upcoming year. So our work is really focused on trying to push back and show how transformative and how important these programs are in meeting California's climate and air quality obligations. We still have a major climate issue, but we also have a significant amount of air pollution. Our air fails to meet national and state air quality standards. The biggest source of that comes from the transportation sector. So the state budget is taking a lot of our efforts and really emphasizing the medium and heavy duty sector and the importance of transitioning that to cleaner technologies away from diesel in particularly, but also supporting transit, both in terms of capital programs and operations, as well as mobility. At the Air Resources Board, the California Air Resources Board, which is our statewide air regulator, this is going to be a very, very big year for clean air. Just in a couple of months, the Air Resources Board will consider new rules to reduce pollution from locomotives, as well as a new rule called Advanced Clean Fleets. And what that's looking at doing is starting to transition the medium and heavy duty sector to fully zero emissions by 2035, 2036. That's something that our policy director in Sacramento, Bill McGavern, has been very active on and working on. And just those two rules alone will go a long way in improving public health, both in terms of reducing smog, but as well as reducing diesel particulate matter, the most prevalent carcinogen in our air. Another significant rule at the Air Resources Board is relating to hexavalent chromium, which is used oftentimes in plating and metal finishing. However, it's also hexavalent chromium is also the second most potent carcinogen that CARB has recognized. So there's a lot of work being done in that space, looking at what's been happening in Southern California, where there was actually significant amounts of hex chrome emissions in different communities, and applying some of those lessons statewide. And then finally, at the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which is Southern California, the district is in the process of developing new rules for the ports and rail yards in trying to reduce emissions from those sectors. And this has been a long fought battle and something that has gone on for many years. And I know Joe is familiar with many of those discussions during his time on the South Coast Board. But both of those sources, the ports and the rail yards, are significant sources in Southern California. The ports are the largest source of emissions, but we know that as a goods movement hub, they're going to continue being there. So how do we clean those operations? How do we encourage cleaner trucks? How do we get cleaner operations in those facilities, like what South Coast is trying to do with the warehouses? So using really innovative approaches in reducing air pollution from those different sources is going to be very important going forward. So that's just a very quick, brief update about some of our policy work going on at all levels of government. We're a small but mighty organization and try to fight for clean air wherever we can.
Thanks, Chris. That was a great summary. I can never keep up with you when you're talking about these things. I'm processing like one thing you say and then you go on to the next and I can't keep up. But I see that we're joined by Abbas Gudarzi, old friend, a hydrogen guy from way back. So thank you for joining us, Abbas. We're going to wrap up. We are 4 minutes from where we're supposed to end. So we're trying to get you out of here on time. But first, I'd like to thank all of you for participating. Just having everyone having an interest in these issues is really energizing and very positive thing to see. We've got this wonderful chance today to learn about what Foothill Transit has gone through, what they're doing, why they've done it, and some of the challenges they've encountered, some of the solutions they've embraced. But really, it's all about their leadership in the public transit space, and we really thank them for what they've done. Absolutely fantastic, partner in cleaning the air and preventing climate change for us. So thank you, Foothill. Thank you for being a Coalition for Clean Air supporter. I want to thank everyone who participated today. I know I might not have gotten to all of your questions. You had so many great questions in the chat. I do apologize that we didn't have time to get to every question, but maybe next time. And obviously, if you want to follow up, you can always just email us and get a hold of us at Coalition for Clean Air, and we can put you in touch with folks to try to answer any questions you have. We do want to make sure that you have June 30th on your calendar for the Japanese American National Museum in downtown Los Angeles for the California Air Quality Awards. It's a really special event for us. It's a sort of a business lunch format. We have wonderful honorees this year. We're going to have a really interesting conversation, and it's an important way to show your support for Coalition for Clean Air through your sponsorship, through your ticket purchases, through an ad purchase, however you want to do it. It's our major fundraiser for the year, and without the success of events like the Air Quality Awards, we can't do this. We can't help educate people about the where we're going with clean public transportation and how, or any of the other things that we're doing that Chris just talked about. So also wanted to make sure, one last plug for Clean Air Day, California Clean Air Day, which Foothill Transit has been a big supporter of for many, many years. We're entering into our 6th year of Clean Air Day. We're going to have millions of people participating, doing at least one thing for Clean Air Day. We have partnerships with businesses, with agencies, with community groups and members. We have a wonderful small grant, mini grant program to support the efforts of people who are getting people together to do things for clean air and celebrate air quality for October 4th, 2023. So put Clean Air Day on your calendar, go to cleanairday.org. And I don't know, Brian, I'll have to ask you a question. You have to come off mute. Have we got the site updated for this year yet?
Check the site out after Earth Day.
Okay, after Earth Day. That's all right. So
yeah, you can go there now. It's just know
Yeah.
you got exciting new bells and whistles coming to cleanairday.org after Earth Day.
Yeah, we've got some good work going on updating the Clean Air Day website. So cleanairday.org after Earth Day, which is it's appropriate. That's just 2 weeks from now. It's actually 13 days. So wonderful. And in the spirit of Clean Air Day, I'm going to wish all of you guys a day of breathing clean air. And thank you again. I think we're going to wrap up right on time.